Hello everyone, Sunny here, and welcome to the first ever video that I'll be recording for this channel. So, first of all, I just found a puzzle while doing some tactics, and, well, it helped me realize that insane things can happen even with such few pieces on the board. So, while analyzing this endgame puzzle, I learned a lot, and it's very instructive. It featured many different concepts, and yeah, I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I did. And feel free to pause whenever you would like throughout the video if you would like to think about the position just on your own. In fact, I would encourage it. There's a lot of good stuff. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so I'll be covering everything I analyzed from this position forward. It may look simple, but trust me, there is some absolutely insane stuff coming up. And yeah, I may not be able to mention everything, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments down below. And without further ado, let's get started. All right. So first of all, I'll start off by saying that you should probably ignore the engine on the right side. I know it says white is winning, but that's because the last position I was on, white was winning. But that doesn't mean like as we go through the puzzle, like there might be like instances of mistakes, and white won't always be winning, but the engine will stay the same because it's just kind of on that page. So yeah, just kind of put the engine aside for now. And so the first thing I looked at when I first got into this puzzle was well, what are we playing for as on the white side? And so what I noticed first was that Black's king and bishop are like in a defensive position. Black is um, clearly, in my view, holding on to a draw, and White is the one playing for a win because I mean, look at how far advanced these pawns are, and there's like so many forward moves to consider, such as like king to c6, f6, g6, all of the moves that Black would have to be careful about. And so I'll start off by saying, I guess, like the first move I considered. And so that move would be none other than g6. So before I say anything else, what do you guys think of this move? And I'm just going to close the door in the background because I think it's a little loud. My parents are watching TV. Okay, there we go. All right. Give you guys 2 more seconds. Okay. So when I first looked at g6, it was honestly very tempting because Black has a dark squared bishop, and by putting the pawns on the light squares, we're essentially, rendering the bishop useless. However, there is a drawback of putting the pawn on, f5, e6, and g6, all light squares, and it's the fact that these dark squares become really weak, and easily, the bishop can exploit that. And g6 would in fact be a mistake. In fact, Black would be winning. So after the move king to f6, you would have to defend this pawn with king to e4. Otherwise, you're just gonna lose your entire house basically. And so king to e4, and then essentially what Black is able to do is get this situation where like after something like this may not be the best move, but after something like bishop to d6, White continues to try and hold on to the pawn. Let's just say something like king to d5, attacking the bishop, and then bishop to e5, and then actually let's go bishop e7 just to really illustrate the point. You see how Black has everything blocked, and so as White, and we're trying to play for a win, this is certainly not an ideal situation because now we can't move any pawns forward, and Black can play for a win first of all with king to g5. I'll just show you this line I have. It'll be king to g5, king to e5, bishop to f6 check, and eventually Black is able to force White's king away. So now if White pushes this pawn, Black will just take it, and if White walks away with the king, well, Black will just take the pawn, and well, White can't really push this pawn, so White will have to lose something, and well, White's gonna probably lose the whole house, and then Black is gonna take this, and then this pawn will be enough to win. And so that's why g6, while it looks tempting, it is not a good idea because it gives Black huge control over these dark squares, and eventually Black is able to force White's king away and win all these pawns. And so just to show you guys, I'll open the engine, and in fact, king to f6 would be the way to win it for Black, -3. And so let's move on to the next thing I analyzed, and that would be none other than the move king to c6. So again, this is another forward move, but this is the move that I would say I rejected fairly quickly, and it's the fact that it's kind of a one-move threat. I don't think it accomplishes much. Like first of all, White's king is probably not gonna get in this way. It grabs space, but it also moves White's sorry, not White's, Black's bishop to a better position. Let's say Black can play something like bishop to e5, and then now if you play g6, you have the same problem. In fact, this is literally the same position. And if you play f6, now Black can take everything, and then now it's just going to be a draw. And so, yeah, I wonder if black has anything better than that, or if this is just draw. Let's just see. I think it's just a draw, yeah. Black's just going to take everything, and then it'll be a draw. Yep. And so let's move back. And then if you try to chase the bishop, I just wanted to point this out, black is just going to continue harassing your pawns, and then now you have to make a decision because now you can't protect this one. If you push it, again, you leave these huge weaknesses on this side, and if you push this pawn, now black will just take, and then black will grab this pawn, and then this pawn will unfortunately not be able to make it. If you had king to d6, I think it might be good for white, but unfortunately you don't. And so, yeah, white will just have to step away with the king or push the pawn, and both cases would be a draw. Alright, so let's just go back all the way to the beginning. Okay, so the winning move is none other than the move f6. So, first of all, you might look, skeptical about the move f6 because, I mean, if black takes, and then, well, we take back, well, doesn't black just stop the pawn and get the draw anyways? Well, you'd be correct to say that. And in fact, that's precisely the reason why instead of taking back, we are going to do what on this move? Yep, hopefully you said the move g6, and then essentially the idea here is white just has two very far advanced pawns, and although we gave black a pass pawn of their own, white's pawns are superior because black's king is essentially overloaded. So I'll give you guys an example. If black just does, I don't know, if black just tries to push the pawn, white actually has a really nice threat here, and that's none other than the move g7. And amazingly, white's pawns kind of create this weird barricade, and then black's king cannot get to the g pawn. Black's king cannot step onto f8 or f7, and of course if black goes here, white just promotes. And the key takeaway is that black also cannot stop this pawn with the bishop, because, well, first of all, black cannot play bishop e5, and even if black could, white could just still promote. And so that's essentially the threat with the move g6. And so black would have to react to this immediately. If black plays something like, I don't know, a king move like king to e7, again, we have the same threat, as you guys can see. And so that's why the only move for black would be the move king to f8. So what do you guys think white should do next? Okay, so the next move for white is king to c6, attacking the bishop. And the idea of this move is essentially if the bishop just moves away, let's say to e5, you're going to go to d7, and then now this pawn is unstoppable. So black cannot really stop it with the bishop. Well, you're just going to take it, and cannot stop it with the king. And this pawn is far too slow, so white will be winning this. And so, just going to ask you guys a question. What if black plays the much more trickier move, in my opinion, bishop to a5? What would be the winning move here? Okay, so hopefully you guys didn't say king to d7, because now we are one move slow, and black has the move bishop to b4, stopping our pawn. And essentially the bishop will stop the e-pawn, and the king is just in time to stop the g-pawn as well. So I'm just going to give you guys an example of what might happen. The only way for white to make progress now would be to sacrifice the g-pawn and force the king away. But even if you try to push the pawn, black would just take, and then this would actually be losing for white if you try to push for this win. And as you guys can see, it is minus 49.1. And so let's move back. Okay. And I believe this was not the position. It was, yeah, here. So the winning move, I'll give you guys a few seconds to find it. Okay. If you spotted this move blew my mind at first, and I was able to spot it in the end. But I had to like calculate like 3 times just to make sure. And that is none other than the move g7 check. And so first of all, if black's king just steps away, you're going to promote and win the game because you're, well, queening. And so black will have to take the pawn. And now, what would be the winning move next? So if you try to play king to d7, we still have the same problem. Black still plays bishop to b4 and stops our pawn. And unfortunately, we're unable to promote. But here, since the black's king is now deflected from the f8 square, it is no longer guarding e7. And so this opens up what move? Yep, that's correct, e7. And now, bishop to b4 no longer stops the pawn because it just promotes. It becomes a queen. We just essentially played like two moves in a row after deflecting the king away. And so now, after e7, black will have to stop the pawn with king to f7. And white can play king to d7, and now there's no way to stop promotion. So, insane stuff. We essentially just sacrificed our G pawn, which was about to promote, to deflect the king away, just for this like one move difference, and then now we step in and promote our own pawn. So absolutely amazing stuff. But the fun doesn't end there. So I just wanted to show you guys this other line, so all the way back here. And that is why black cannot take the pawn, because of this G6. Insane move. And so, just ask you guys a question. What would happen if black plays the move king to f8? So give you guys a second to think about this. Okay. So hopefully you didn't say take the pawn, because honestly I wouldn't blame you if you did. Like, this was what I initially thought white should do. But upon analysis with the upon further analysis, black's king can just take on g7. And now you know, white's pawns, like, they're great, but you can't promote them. After king to c6, well, if you push, I point this out, black's king just stops this. And then if you try to push this, black's king takes. If you push, black's king stops both pawns. But if you try to walk over and you attack the bishop, sorry, right here, attack the bishop, black now has the move bishop to d8. And once again, the bishop is stopping the e pawn, and the king is stopping the g pawn. And so it'll just be like, you know, another draw, like this. And you guys might be wondering why black didn't have the bishop d8 move in the other line. So I'll just show you right here. Yeah, after white attacks the bishop here. Why can't black play the move bishop d8? Give you guys a second to think about this. So after white plays king to d7, attacking the bishop, if the bishop just moves away, now white can play e7 check, and then promote the pawn. And this will be a win. And so black cannot do that. But if black tries to stay in the pawn's way, unfortunately, you know, the g pawn comes back to bite. G7 check. And now black's king has to step away from the bishop. This is a deflection tactic. And after white takes, white's pawn is a lot faster than black's pawn. And this will be another win for white. And so let's move back. And so that's why bishop to d8 doesn't work in this variation, because of the g7 deflection tactic. But on the other one, it does, which is pretty amazing stuff, how subtle things can get in the endgame. And so, yeah, that is precisely why after f6, king f8, we cannot take this pawn. And so instead of this, one of the winning moves that I found when I was playing the puzzle would be king to c6. So there's other winning moves. I'll show you guys the engine's recommendation later on. But this move, I think, is like very instructive, and you guys will see why in a bit. And so let's say black takes our pawn on f6. What is our next move? All right. So I'm planning on putting this position in the thumbnail of the video because, I mean, this is just insane stuff. If you take the bishop, it is actually a draw. Black plays the move king to e7, and now black stops your pawn. And even though you can play g6 here, essentially black will take, and then if you push, black will stop the pawn, so don't want to do that. And then if you play king to c6, black will play f5, walk over to your pawn, and at the very least get a draw. And so in fact, this will end up something like king to c5, king f6, and then after we get here, white will manage to get the opposition and not lose the game, but definitely not what white wanted. And so if you guys are a bit more advanced at endgames, you'll understand that, yeah, there's no way for black to make progress either. But white could have definitely played for more, and so let's go back. Go back all the way here. And so if you take the bishop, right here, and black takes, if you take the bishop, you essentially allow black to blockade the e7 square, and then secure the draw that way. Hey guys, so first of all, apologies, I forgot to include this part of the video while I was analyzing, got too caught up in things, and so if you were wondering why we can't just, if we could just take this f6 pawn, so unfortunately this would also be a draw because of the move bishop to d8, and the idea is essentially that if you were to play f7 afterwards, black would get the dark squared blockade like this. And also, if you were to play, well, I don't know, king to d7, black can just take your pawn and then, you know, take both pawns. And otherwise, if you wanted to play e7, good job, you fork the pieces, but unfortunately, all your pawns are gone. So that's why this would be a draw. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that, back here, the other winning move would be g6. And so if you found this as well, great job. So g6 is an alternative. But the point is, this bishop, you cannot take, because otherwise black's king would get to e7. Although it gets to e7 here, the idea is that now you have two passers and you have like two threats. So if they were to come to e7, then you can now play g7, and they cannot stop the pawn because of a similar idea we saw earlier. And so instead of taking the bishop, the winning move, believe it or not, is the insane king to d7, sidestepping the bishop. And essentially now if black takes the pawn, you're just promoting. Like even if black has the bishop and the extra pawn, they're just too slow. They're just not going to be able to promote this pawn, and you're going to be able to win with the queen. And furthermore, if black tries to stop your pawn with the bishop, like re-sacrifice it on like d8 or d6, then you can just take the bishop. And the difference now is that if black tries to take your pawn, now you get to d7 and you promote. But the key difference is that after you take, black no longer has access to this e7 square. And so if black tries to, not take your pawn for whatever reason, they try to stay in front. Now you have two pawns, and this would be an easy win. So I'll just give an example. Let's say here you already have like king to d7, just promote, and this will be a win. And so that's why you have to sidestep the bishop. You resist the temptation. Don't take it, and play king to d7. Insane stuff. But that is not where the fun ends, because if black plays, let's just say, bishop to a5, what would be the winning move here? Okay. So I suppose I kind of lied when I said the fun doesn't end, because I guess this is kind of like an easier moment than the other positions in this puzzle. And one of the ways you can win this, I would say the simplest way, is just to take this pawn on g7, because, well, if black doesn't take, you're just going to promote and make a queen. So after black takes, you once again have this e7 move. Do not play king to d7 because black covers your pawn. You once again have e7. You've deflected the king away, and so this endgame is, honestly, it can even be a masterclass in deflection. It just shows like how powerful the tactic is. And afterwards, black cannot play bishop b4 because you promote. Once again, have to play this. And then here, and you promote the pawn. And so, insane stuff. And let me just see if I forgot to mention anything. I think that was a lot. And, oh, right, yeah, I want to show you guys the engine recommendation as well. So you didn't have to go down all that. You could have also played, instead of king to c6, you could have played the move e7 check. This would have been easier to win. And so essentially the idea here is that if black just tries to stay in front of your pawn, now black's king is overloaded. You can just, simplest way to win this, the engine recommends the, I think, savage move king to e6, which is insane. You're essentially threatening this pawn checkmate, and if black takes, you're threatening it anyways, because black can't actually do anything about this. And so that's the engine's recommendation to win, but if you don't see that, that's okay. You can just take the pawn, and then there's no way to stop both pawns, essentially. This would have been an easier way to win, but I still felt like, the move king to c6 was just, way more cool, in my opinion. Even though it's not technically the optimal way, you have to identify that, oh, you can't take this bishop. You have to go king to d7, which just goes to show that identifying your priorities is so important in the endgame, and even this like subtle mistake of taking the bishop can just cost you a win. Put you in a position that you could have otherwise won, and you'll have to settle for a draw after the move like king to e7. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. So it is my very first one. Feel free to let me know if you have any sort of feedback, or if there's something you would like to see on the channel in the future. And so before you just leave, I just wanted to let you know of an offer that I'm doing over the summer. And so essentially, I'll be starting my own chess coaching business. Really excited about that. And I'll be mainly targeting beginners and intermediates. And so if you're interested in, as a beginner or intermediate player yourself, or if you know someone that might be interested, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help. And that's about it. Enjoy your day. Take care, and I'll see you soon.